Hello everyone. So in this session, we are going to discuss about choosing the right career, but very specific to a career which is within operations, which is nothing but supply chain operations, any area within supply chain, or supply chain consulting and ERP consulting. Okay. So with that, let's get it started with the agenda. So as I've said, the agenda is going to be a discussion on the operations role specifically and the career around it. And then comes the supply chain consulting. And the third one is an ERP consulting role and career. And then we go and compare. And specifically, I will discuss about operations versus consulting. And I'll also discuss more on functional consulting versus ERP based consulting, and then I'll give my own recommendation based on my experience. Before we move ahead and discuss about these roles, I want to also talk a little bit about each of these roles in particular. First one, operations role, as the name suggests, it could be an operations role in manufacturing or in procurement or warehousing or on distribution or on transportation, doesn't matter, right? It could be any function within supply chain or an operations role taking care of end to end of operation. But in nutshell, it is a role focusing on execution, right? The second one, what you see here is the supply chain consulting. So what you do here is you consult within areas of supply chain. It could be again an end-to-end of supply chain, or it could be a specific area within supply chain. Like for example, it could be network modeling, or it could be on warehouse optimization, or it could be on process. Anything within that, or it could be an end-to-end. The third one we have is ERP consulting. It is very similar to a supply chain consulting, but the difference is here the complete role revolves around a specific product, and it could be any ERP or it could be even a supply chain product. Like for example, if it is a transportation management system, so you could consult very specific to a software. I think that is a nutshell in terms of ERP consulting. But the reason why I've used it as an ERP consulting is the softwares like, for example, SAP or NetSuite. These roles revolve around particular software, but they have a long span of life. It's not short-lived. It's not like you need to work on a particular software and only up to 10 years. Not like that. They themselves have a long span of career. So that's the reason I chose the specific software as ERP consulting. Okay, so this would have given a clarity. And then when I am saying operations versus consulting, I am talking about whether you are going to be pretty much fully focused on execution kind of roles or consulting, which includes supply chain consulting as well as the ERP consulting. And then when I say functional consulting versus ERP consulting, I'm going to specifically talk about, we are going to specifically focus on a functional consultant versus a consultant who's focused more towards a software. So here the catch here is when we say functional consultant, that consulting is pretty much focused on problem solving rather than a product. But on a ERP consulting, it is problem solving using a particular product. I think that is where you can decode each of these roles, what I talked about, and last one would be my recommendation. Okay, so let's move ahead. As you can see here, the first dimension, what I'm going to talk about is work life. So work life in the sense like what you do day to day, like 8 hours in a day, you are going to be as a consultant or you are going to part of operations, how your work life is going to be. Okay, that is the first one. So if it is an operations, again, I may not be able to elaborate so much, but I'll give you a gist of each role. If you're in operations, right, how it is going to be? First and foremost thing, it is going to be completely execution of a set of tasks, or if you are on a management side, it is managing your team to execute a set of tasks. This is what you will be doing most of the time, and there is going to be also the daily firefighting things like stockouts and delays, some issues related to customer experience. This firefighting is also going to be a part and parcel of your role, and then comes metrics and KPIs, continuous improvements, and how you are going to keep everyone accountable. This is how your work life is going to be. If you are in operations. Okay, and again, depending on the level you are, there may be some change. If you're really interested on if I am in a ground level executing things versus a vice president of supply chain, how my role is going to be. If you're interested on that, down in the description, I will give a specific video which would spend more time on operations. But for this session, we are focused more on comparison between the roles. The second one, functional consultant, which is nothing but the supply chain consulting, but I am going to call this continuously as functional consulting. Here, the complete contrasting to operations is this is completely project based. So you pick up a problem, right? You analyze the problem, come up with a solution, implement it, and stabilize it, and you move on to the next project. So this is completely project based. I think that is a drastic difference. So some many of the people will ask me now, since I've served on both of these roles, if I am a consultant, then I won't get a hands-on at all, right? You will get it, right? So, for example, you being a consultant, the prime objective or the prime role is on project-based work environment. That is how it is going to be. But you do get flavor of getting hands-on because you will go to client-facing, you will go to the client side, you will be on a facility when you're implementing. So you definitely get that operational experience. But the prime experience or exposure what you get is definitely project based. Completely on the other side, what I talked about in operations, sometimes the operations people will ask in terms of, okay, then I won't get any project experience. Indeed you will get, right? I would fairly say at least 20% of a manager's day to day work should revolve around improvements or building for the future, which is nothing but projects. But the prime exposure or the accountability or expectation is around getting things done, the operations part. The third one we have is ERP consultant, which is obviously tech enabled. This is very similar to the functional consultant because the ERP consultant is also going to be project based. But the only difference here is you are going to gather requirements around what are the issues faced and things like that, and then you are trying to solve that using that ERP which you are engaged with. I think that is how things are going to be if you are a ERP consultant. I'm sure this is clear in terms of work life. The second dimension, what I'm going to talk about is what is that real wow factor or an excitement factor within each of these roles. Okay, so let's head on to that. So if you are an operations role, what is that wow factor? Now, I can probably put myself into that role because I've started my career in operations as a young engineer, 21 years old. I've been handling a team size of around 35 people on a manufacturing company. You know what? What really drives me or makes me really, hey, you know what? I am on the right job. It is that touch and feel on the product because you very closely associate with the product and the process what you're part of. So that real getting your hands dirty, for me, that is a real wow factor, and I am pretty sure that is the excitement on the operations where you closely associate yourself with the product and the process, and this applies end to end of the supply chain. But when it is a consultant, now I am a full-time consultant, so I am a functional consultant as well. So here, completely contrasting to that, the wow factor is the diverse exposure because you pick up a product and there is a problem on it, you analyze it, you fix it, then you move on to a different product or a different process, right? So this diverse exposure is what gives you that real excitement if you are a consultant. So uh, the other important USP of being a consultant is you easily get a chance to work with different sectors. I work with almost 15 plus sectors, right? Will I be able to do that if I am continuously doing operations? It's little bit difficult to do that. But being a consultant and being on the right organization, you should be able to get not just the diverse exposure project based, but also multiple sector basis exposure as well. The last one, ERP consultant, pretty much similar in terms of the you also get exposure to multiple sectors and multiple projects, but The only change here is the problem solving. You again use that particular software which you are engaged with to solve that problem, right? But the real USP here is, as you do more and more projects on the ERP, you become an expert on that area, and you're able to solve problems better, and these kind of things, plus the tech part, right? You are automating things and make things into a digital way of execution. That is a real USP on the ERP consultant role. The third one I have is in terms of cross-functional team management, right? Which applies for all the three roles. If you are an operations person, yes, for example, if you are in manufacturing, you coordinate with your procurement team, you coordinate with the planning team, you coordinate with the warehousing and the transportation team, right? Say same applies with if you are part of any other function. So cross-functional team management works definitely for operations. It definitely applies for if you are a consultant, because you are going to meet a lot of new people, and the cross functional team management, it's not necessarily your own team, it is the team at your client's place as well. So definitely the cross functional team management applies to both the consulting functional as well as ERP consulting. But the key difference is, if you are in operation, right, you get a chance to break ice. You get sufficient time. You can take a typical ice breaking takes probably 4 weeks, 6 weeks. You can take your time to do that because it's the same team which you are going to work with. But the real challenge, which even me personally faced when I'm, because I've been a very good team player because my roots are in manufacturing, and my roots are in manufacturing organization where there are unions. It's not like you just go and tell them, hey, you know what, you get this done, I want this much. It doesn't work out. I think I think people who manage teams where there are unions will understand. You cannot use that kind of language. You can use rapport. You can build trust with the ground level teams. You be part of the team, right? There is no manager and ground level people. You are part of single team, and you get things done. So I am from that route, right? But when I moved after almost 15 years into a full-time consultant, what happened is, for me, the challenge is I don't have the luxury of time to break ice with my team. And many times what happens when we go as a consultant to an organization, you work with the senior leadership, the CXO level people. You tell them what you can do, and you know what happens? The CXO is convinced. Now he will take you and put you onto the shop floor with the working team. Now they may not look you with a or welcome you with a garland and telling, hey, you know what, you're coming to make some change, you come in. Because hey, you know what, you're going to exactly touch the area which they are working on for decades. So they, in many cases, they are going to look at you like an enemy, right? I am putting it really transparently. This is how you will be treated. But at that environment, you need to make those team members part of your team. Otherwise, you won't be able to implement all the changes what you're going to bring in. This is very, very crucial. This is very, very challenging. And this is one area as a cross functional team management, you need to master it. And that's what I always say, if you're not a good team player, it is very difficult to be a very successful consultant. And the same thing applies for the ERP consultant as well. Okay, so the next one we have is around what is the kind of learning what we get, because many a times people switch jobs because there is no learning on the current job. Yes, salary plays a very good role, but the real top performers, if you really ask them why they switch jobs, one of the major reason is learning. The learning stops. So I would say learning happens on all the three roles. In operations, there is learning. In being a consultant, there is learning. But the learning is pretty different. For example, learning on operations, how it happens, it is going to be continuous and deep in one area, right? On operations, right? And then, in case if you want to diversify, I'm pretty transparent with you. Many cases within the organization, sometimes it will get to a stagnant state. You have to be proactive in taking the right move sometimes switch jobs and get into a different job to get that exposure. But in a consultant role, it is relatively easier because it is project based. So you need to just ensure you are getting the right projects, you catch hold of the right project, you will be able to have that continuous learning experience, and this applies for the ERP consultant as well. But for operations, many a time, though the organization is willing to give you that exposure if you are a top performer, but you should have an opening on that area. So there are a lot of if and thens. So many cases you end up moving out from a current job if you want that more exposure. For me, again, I want to pick my example. I started in manufacturing. I think it has been almost 25 years. I started as a graduate engineer trainee, and we are, if my memory is right, around 15 people we joined. You know what? You and the top guy in the training program, I am second. There is one more a guy who came the top. That person, we both started in manufacturing. 25 years. I moved on from manufacturing to procurement to warehousing to transportation. Today, I can very well confidently call myself as a supply chain person. Right? I am a supply chain professional. Completely contrasting to that, the guy who came first, my close friend of mine, he 25 years, he is still in the same organization in the same manufacturing. Can I now say that he is not learning? Absolutely not. He is learning, but he is learning on the manufacturing, and the organization gave him a real growth, right? That he is literally heading the manufacturing, and he is a plant in charge to that level. So he got the opportunities. He stick on to manufacturing, but I completely moved out because I want to look at the different areas. I want to touch base on the different functions within operations and make it into an end to end. Both has learning, but that is a conscious choice you need to make. Both has a great future, but it is a choice what you need to make. I probably leave it over there. In terms of consulting, as I've told you, everything is fantastic, but I have a catch here. If you got into a consulting firm, but they have put you into just one area, there is a chance like that. They will say you belong to manufacturing, or sometimes they put sector specific FMCG. Sometimes both this functional consulting and ERP consulting will become little monotonous. When I say monotonous, what will happen? You have been always given one type of project. You did very well on an area. You keep on getting the same nature of project. This you need to consciously work with your manager and ensure you are getting diverse projects. Otherwise, the learning somewhere it will get into a stagnant state. Those are some of the key insights to ensure how you can have that continuous learning in any of these areas what you choose. The next one what we have, very very important thing. I think please listen very very carefully. This is switching jobs. I get lot of queries on people working on operations. They want to get into consulting, or people in consulting want to get into operations. And another one, very very important one, people who are in ERP based consulting, but they wanted to get into functional consulting or operations role. The third one, what I've said, from the ERP consulting to functional, this is where I think, at least my experience, this is where most of the people reach out to me to have that switch back. So, what I'm going to discuss on this specific dimension is how this switching jobs happen when you are already on one area. These three areas, what I talked about. So, let's spend time on it. See, if you are in operations, it is very easier to move into consulting role. It is very easier, right? That means, like, let me put this way. Like when I am moving on to consulting, I already had around 10 years of experience on operations, and it was a very seamless transition for me into uh, consulting because I am already managed a team. So I am the soft skill of team management is already there. I am already hands on. Now it is very easy for me to show the skill set and then become a consultant. But if you started your career directly in consulting, and now you want to get into operations, it is little challenging, right? again, you may be really having the skill, but whether the system what we are in will give you the chance, it's no. Again, I won't blame the system. Even if you, for example, when I am hiring for an operations role, for example, let me take like a regional manager operations to run a warehouse. I have one profile, 10 years of experience running warehouses, another 10 years, excellent profile, but optimizing warehouses. I will pick the first one, right? So, unfortunately, you won't even get a chance to be part of that interview and do that. So, that transition from consulting to operations is little challenging. That is multifold difficult if you are an ERP consultant and you want to get into operation. That is how the current market is, right? There is no two ways on it. So, in case if you are a person who wants to experience all of this, I would recommend, and if you are a fresher who is listening to this, my recommendation, and if you want to experience everything, start with the operations. Then this transition is very, very easier. Having said that, you have 15 years of experience and you have experience of both. That is a different story. Once you have more than decade of experience and you worked on both, you can switch back and forth. That is it. The job market will give you that opportunity. But the only catch here is starting on consulting and then going on to an operations. That but it's still a challenge. Now, one more very very important point before we move on to the next one. Even to be a successful consultant, I strongly believe that hands-on experience matters. Because you cannot say even on consulting I am getting a hands-on experience. You know what? It is very very limited. Second, one word you cannot use being a consultant is, hey, you know what? I didn't know that. Can you just explain me how to do that? Can you ask that? Can you ask your client and ask, I don't know, can you just explain me this bit? No, because moment you are a consultant, people see you as an expert. So it is more of you telling and others listening, right? So they see you as, please tell me, try to help me out on this problem. You tell me, I will execute. So at that stage, it's very difficult to get hands-on. I will learn. No, the learning is not going to be as steep as being in operations, managing almost 80% of time. Your job is to get things done. There, the learning will be very steep. So my recommendation is uh, having that few years of operational experience, people management, and then becoming a consultant, you will definitely have an edge. And me being a consultant, even today, even like today, yesterday, every time when I'm executing a project, I am meeting with a client. When there is a successful delivery of a project, I always think back my first organization and which is in manufacturing. I always thank that experience for 5 years in manufacturing, which definitely gives me an edge as a consultant. The third one is the switch between ERP consultant back to a functional consulting or operations. So from an ERP consultant to a functional consultant is easier, right? Because you are a consultant, you are already doing a consulting on a specific product, right? It is not like you are coming up with something very different processes. Let's take a very specific example. A functional consultant who's into warehouse management and an ERP consultant who is specifically focused on a WMS implementation. Both of them have abundant knowledge on warehouse management. So it is easy for that ERP consultant to switch to a WMS functional consultant. It is a very seamless transition. But if that consultant, ERP consultant, wants to get into operations, the same points what you talked about in terms of the functional consulting you started to operation, the same issues will come over here as well. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. So here we are going to talk about the different tools. Now, each role have a different set of tools. All the three roles, you should definitely have the basic analytic ability. You should know the basic understanding of an ERP, WMS, those kind of things also is very much required. You should have the basic process understanding. All the process transformational tools are required because you are going to do process improvements in all the three roles. So what I am going to tell is which is the prime requirement in each of the roles. So if you take operations, your first and foremost thing requirement is everything related to the job. That means if you are into operations, scheduling, capacity planning, network optimization, key performance indicators, management information systems, right? How to do management reporting, presentations. All of these are the key tools which are required for you. This is your toolkit. And on that, project management like PMO certifications, Lean and Six Sigma, theory of constraints, right? Or analytical tools like Minitab. All of these will be definitely will be an add-on, and it will support you on your day-to-day work. If you are a consultant, and that to a functional consultant, your prime tool set revolves around that process transformation and problem solving, right? So right from PDCA, Lean Six Sigma kind of things will come on the front, because in operations I put that at the last, but here as a consultant, that is your day to day. So analytical tools comes first, and also the process transformation related tools comes first, because that is your day to day. The third one, ERP consultant, again, as I told you, here it is very obvious. Your prime tool where you need to be specialized on is that software which you are working on. So, which ERP you are working on, or which TMS you are working on, or which WMS you are engaged with. Basis that, that is your prime tool. Rest everything will become your secondary tool. Okay, so that's on the tools. And the next one we have is in terms of challenges. Okay, so we talked about the USP, we talked about the work life. For each of this role have a set of challenges. Very specifically, in operations, I already talked about this. In operations, um, it is good. The learning will be really good on the first 3 months and 6 months when you get into a new job. But if you're going to do this same thing again and again, definitely you will reach a point where you need to now diversify. You look for opportunities within the organization, but most of the cases you may have to switch outside your organization. So you have to be very, very proactive here, right? Otherwise, you will become comfort. You will get into that comfort zone. Once you have that comfort, it is very difficult to go outside. And when you get that comfort in an organization, and the organization not giving you opportunities to diversify within, then it is a big, big red flag for me, right? So it is very important. You need to clearly don't get into that comfort zone, because if you get into a comfort zone, that becomes one of the challenge here. In terms of the consultant, that is a functional consultant, the second one, um, sometimes you get into a lot of gray areas, right? And as I've told you, you you the expectation itself, you need to wear multiple hats, specifically for functional consulting, and that too when you're doing end to end, right? Sometimes what happens is you cannot go and tell the client I don't know, but you need to learn lot of things on the run. So if you are a fast learner, it aids you, right? Because you're a fast learner, that is expectation, it merges well. But if you couldn't do that, then it becomes a problem for you. So that is one challenge and opportunity for you, and you have to ensure you do that. Second one of the biggest challenge, what I can tell, I already talked about this. You need to ensure that you are not get into the same monotonous projects, right? So in my case, I choose the projects because it's I am the founder of my organization, and I can choose the projects what I want. I'm still 20 to 25% of my time goes on projects. I can design, and then the rest I give it to my team. But when you are working, sometimes you cannot demand. So you go and find that role in itself tells you that you're not going to get into a specific type of project, but you have to be very careful. So when you are actually sitting on an interview and you are looking at your title, you are looking at your job description, find out what is the team structure in that organization. If the team structure of that organization is retail, right? Digital transformation. If the vertical itself is like this, you are directly getting into digital transformation or retail. What else you expect? You are going to do only that project. But if that organization structure is a bunch of consultants, all the projects come to a same funnel. Whoever is available, take it. That is completely different. So if you are not clear on what you are getting into, whose fault is this? Right? So you got the answer. So it is very important, more than even looking at salary and everything. Functional consulting, ensure what you are getting into, and it is very, very crucial. The second one, I'll tell you, there is again a fine line here. Sometimes organizations calls us, hey, you know what, we are a functional consultant, but they will sell a product. When you sell a product, you can never have the complete flexibility to do a problem solving. I'll touch base more on this when I'm talking about ERP consulting as well, right? So you have to be very clear in terms of what you are getting into. The last one we have ERP consulting. Now, uh, many of my close friends and even some of my cousins are in software based consulting. Trust me, even after 25 years they are running on that, on that, and so there is that kind of opportunities are available, no doubt at all. I won't never say ERP consulting, what is that, same software, you get bored. Absolutely not, because the projects, the clients, the country, the sector, it is different. You can still be excited the day one, the first project, what excitement you had, you can still have it even after 25 years, no doubt at all. But there as well, you need to do the same thing to ensure that you are not getting into the trap of same sector or same monotonous project. That is one. Second one, please keep in mind there is a very contrasting difference between functional consulting and ERP consulting, right? And this is very, very crucial. In functional consulting, I pick up a problem and my prime objective is to solve the problem. If that functional, as a functional consultant, if that problem requires an ERP to be implemented, I go to the market. I can even look at the 25, 30 ERPs in the market, pick up the best ERP and implement it. But if I am a ERP consultant, I look at the problem, but the solution is already fixed. Correct? The solution is fixed. I cannot go to the market and pick another ERP which is the best fit for this problem. I need to fit the solution what I have, which is the product which I am associated with, to that problem. Actually, this is constraining your problem solving, not just because I am a functional consultant. And in my organization, we had multiple opportunities, big opportunities to associate ourselves with some of the tools, right? And it comes with lots of money. We say no. You know why? Moment we sign something with that particular product, I am from that day I am not a functional consultant, right? I am a functional consultant, but it stops my problem solving ability. It puts a constraint because I have a solution which I need to sell, right? But if I am a 100% functional consultant with no association to any product, I have the complete flexibility to focus only on the problem solving. That is the biggest difference. And as an experience, I can never go towards a product based consulting because I thoroughly enjoy the freeness in terms of the functional consulting, and the clients love it because I don't have the compulsion of selling something, rather I focus on problem solving. But having said that, that is my personal preference. But if you are an ERP consultant, you also have to understand, or you're trying to become an ERP consultant, this is a change, and consciously you need to understand this is the difference, but I like the ERP consulting, and you go to that, then that is perfectly fine. And last word, I told that functional consulting is great because you are doing a problem solving. In that ERP consultant, the challenge is how you are going to make that constrained solution which you already have work. That is one of the key skills that what is required when you have to work as a ERP consultant. So there what you do, you understand the problem, you are thorough on your software, you have to give your client how at least 80% of standard off the shelf will work. That 20% you build and customize for your client. So that will work for your own organization as well as for your client. That is the key skill set requirement on the ERP consultant. Okay, so these are all the challenges. And now with that, we have covered all the 7 dimensions I want to talk to you. Some of the few parting words before I talk about my recommendations to you. All the 3 roles are exciting, right? It is all about personal preference. I am an ops guy. Now I am doing consulting. I love what I do. I am passionate about what I do. But my personal preference, I will never get into an ERP based consulting. That's my preference. All I am requesting you is by the end of this video, you should have the absolute clarity in terms of what each of these, what you want to really experience, and in case if you want to experience all these three, I would recommend you to start with the operations. I think, in fact, that is my first recommendation as well. So, if you want to experience both the sides, you have to start with operations. Again, based on my experience, I'll tell you this would become a seamless experience for you. Next one, if you prefer to be in operations, right? You don't want anything else. You are an ops guy. You want to continue in operations. If that is how I was for the first 5 years, I have never thought I will move out of operations. But things have changed. Even when I was started doing more and more projects, I kind of liked it, and then I've consciously taken a decision to move into the consulting area. But it's your preference. If you have to be in operations, the very very important thing, a thorough and calculative job switches at the right time and role is a must, because many organizations, if you're waiting for the promotion and you will get the bigger portfolio, that is going to be a lot of risk revolved, because even your manager cannot commit you and tell you, you know what, Alvis, you are doing a fantastic job. By next year, including the warehousing, I'm going to give you the transportation. Can any manager tell that? It is very difficult to give that kind of commitment. So please, you have to be proactive if you want to continue in operations and also have that learning experience throughout. And the third one I have is, in consulting space, the right organization is a must, because product based consulting, they call as functional consulting. It's completely different from functional consulting for the same reason what I told you. Okay. And the last one I have, in ERP consulting, please be very very cautious that you don't get into this monotonous work and project. For that, my recommendation for both the ERP consulting as well as your functional consulting, go through the job description clearly, and very very importantly, understand the structure of the verticals in that organization. Moment you do that, it will be very very clear for you what you are getting into. With that, I think I have covered everything what I want to cover in this session. I'm sure this is interesting. In case if you have a follow-up question, please do let me know. And there is also series of career related videos I have planned out. So if anything you specifically required, I can put it into the pipeline. I wish you all a great and prosperous career, and keep in mind, there is no one else, and come and support your career. You be your own boss to ensure you're taking your career in the direction where you want it to be. Thank you and all the best.